Good evening. From the high-stakes power plays in the Persian Gulf to the shifting soil of the Rift Valley, we track the movement defining a continent in transition. This is Africa Focus on KOW TV. My name is Maurice Mbugwe. We begin tonight with a deep dive analysis into the future of African power. A landmark report titled Forces of the Future, recently unveiled in Brussels, suggests that 2026 is the year Africa's transition from being a passive observer to a consequential player in the global stage. However, the Africa Political Outlook report carries a stern warning. Being important is not the same as being influential. The study highlights a fragile governance landscape, noting that while 15 elections are set to take place across the continent this year, the real test lies not in the voting day itself, but in the integrity of the entire process. The advisory board chair observed that while many elections appear legal, the strategic disqualification of candidates often prevents them from being truly fair. He suggested that true legitimacy only comes when leaders ensure their citizens do not feel ignored or frustrated. This push for reform is finding a powerful voice in the younger generation, who are increasingly reshaping political debate from the ground up. In places like Zambia, Foreign Minister Mlambo Haimbe is calling for Africa to have skin in the game by speaking with a unified voice. He argued that the African continent or free trade area cannot succeed if trade barriers persist or if nations continue to speak different diplomatic languages. Meanwhile, Guinea is being cited as a potential success story. The nation has embarked on a massive $200 billion blueprint known as the Simandou 2040 project. By leveraging the world's largest untapped iron ore deposits, Guinea aims to transform into an industrialized economy within the next 15 years. As China remains the continent's most vital economic partner, the message from the Brussels Forum is clear. Africa's future will no longer be determined by what the world offers, but by what Africa demands of itself. The era of the aid donor is over. The era of the strategic partner has just begun. In a significant move for regional economic integration, the Republic of Somaliland has opened its doors to a high-level group of international investors. A delegation of mining experts and financiers from Australia and Canada arrived at Egal International Airport in Hargeisa this week, a signal of a growing global interest in the country's untapped natural resources. The group, which includes specialists in mineral explorations and extraction, was greeted by senior officials from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Energy and Minerals, as well as Somaliland's ambassador to Taiwan. Now, during a formal meeting chaired by Foreign Minister Abdirahman Dahir Aden, the government reaffirmed its commitment to fostering a transparent and secure environment for foreign capital. Minister Aden emphasized that Somaliland is ready to provide all necessary institutional support and data to ensure these potential investments succeed within the country's established legal frameworks. For their part, the Australian and Canadian investors stated that they have been monitoring Somaliland's mineral potential for some time and are now prepared to move forward with concrete investment plans. This visit underscores Hargeisa's strategic focus on the mining sector as a primary engine for job creation and national development. By courting experienced partners from established mining jurisdictions like Perth and Toronto, Somaliland is positioning itself as an emerging frontier for mineral wealth in the Horn of Africa. Turning to the international stage, the war in the Middle East has reached a terrifying 30-day milestone marked by a dramatic escalation in rhetoric and a shift toward potential ground operations. In a recent interview, President Donald Trump expressed a strong desire to take the oil, specifically eyeing Karg Island, the vital hub that handles 90% of Iran's crude exports. He allegedly claimed that the island has little defense and could be seized easily To back this rhetoric, the Pentagon has confirmed that 10,000 troops have been ordered to deploy, with thousands of Marines and members of the 82nd Airborne already arriving in the region. One White House source allegedly described the strategy as a move to seize control of Iran's primary assets to force a breakthrough in the negotiations. However, the fog of war remains thick, while President Trump claimed that Tehran has agreed to most of a 15-point peace plan, even alleging that 20 ships of oil are being sent as a sign of good faith. Iranian officials remain publicly skeptical. In fact, the diplomatic signals are pointing toward a catastrophic break. Iranian politicians are now reportedly pushing to exit the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. If this happens, international oversight would end, potentially opening a direct path to nuclear weaponization. This is the very outcome the US and Israel went to war to prevent, yet the conflict itself is now driving the escalation. On the ground, the complexity is deepening. Footage has reportedly confirmed that Iranian-backed Shia militias from Iraq may have entered the Iranian territory, adding yet another faction to the battlefield. As oil prices hit a staggering $160 a barrel, the biggest shock in history, diplomatic efforts have shifted to Islamabad. Foreign ministers from Turkey, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt met in a desperate bid to find an off-ramp. But with Iran's parliament speaker warning that their forces are waiting for a US ground invasion, that day mark feels less like a turning point and more like the beginning of a much wider, more lethal chapter of the war. Finally, we turn to the environmental crisis unfolding in East Africa, where Kenya is grappling with the devastating aftermath of a historical rainfall. The National Police Service has confirmed that the death toll from weeks of torrential downpours and flash floods has risen to at least 108 people. Since the storms began in early March, the destruction has been widespread, with dozens of vehicles swept away, key power infrastructures damaged, and air traffic frequently disrupted. Now, the human cost is staggering, with more than 2,700 families now displaced across the country. While the rain has eased in certain regions of the country, authorities are warning that the danger is far from over. The soil is reported to be saturated and drainage systems remain clogged, leaving informal settlements and low-lying communities extremely vulnerable to even minor showers. Schools have been forced to close, and some major roads remain impassable, stalling business activity in a nation already feeling the pinch of global inflation. Emergency teams remain on high alert, monitoring river levels and preparing for further evacuations. This crisis has reignited a national conversation about disaster preparedness and the urgent need to protect communities living in flood-prone areas. For now, authorities call for citizens to remain vigilant as the climate continues to deliver challenges that the current infrastructure was never designed to handle. Now, from the resilience of our people to the shifting tides of global power, Africa Focus remains your constant guide. Thank you for joining us. My name is Maurice Mbugwa.